There are moments in life when the noise around us grows deafening, not in volume, but in weight. The size between words, the sharpness of glances, the tension that lingers in a room long after someone has left. These are not just signs of conflict, they are invitations. Invitations to step back, to observe the silent choreography of the soul, and to respond, not with reaction, but with presence. Emotionally intelligent people do not conquer toxic behavior. They dance with it, gently guiding its rhythm without absorbing its discord. They understand that every storm, every difficult person, is part of a divine composition, a symphony where even dissonance has purpose. For in the stillness between the chaos, in the quiet strength of restraint, lies the profound wisdom of alignment with something greater. You are not here to fight every fire. You are here to become the calm that teaches the flame how to flicker in harmony. There's something incredibly human about the instinct to defend ourselves when we feel threatened. When someone disrespects us, mocks us, dismisses us, mocks us, dismisses us, it's almost automatic. We armor up, we retaliate, we try to prove our worth, our innocence, our strength. But here's the thing, emotionally intelligent people, the ones who seem to glide through these moments with an almost impossible grace, they do something different. They don't see enemies, they see echoes. They've learned to look beyond the behavior, beyond the tone of voice, the crossed arms, the sarcasm, and into the story. Because toxic behavior, more often than not, isn't born out of cruelty. It's born out of pain. It's the outward manifestation of an inward fracture. And people who've developed emotional intelligence don't just sense this, they trust it. They've trained themselves to pause long enough to see the person behind the projection. Behind the projection. Think about that person in your life. The one who always seems to criticize, who never lets you feel quite good enough, who drains you the moment they enter the room. Maybe they talk over you. Maybe they downplay your joy. Maybe they downplay your joy. Maybe they carry a cloud of negativity wherever they go. On the surface, it looks like a personal attack. And sure, it feels personal. But what if, just what if, it's not? What if that's the only way they know how to be seen? What if their sharpness is a shield, not a sword? What if their toxicity is actually just unprocessed grief, misplaced anger, or inherited fear? See, when we start to observe behavior through this lens, not as an assault, but as a signal, everything changes. We stop trying to win the argument. We stop trying to fix the person. We even stop trying to change how they treat us. And instead, we get curious. Not curious about how to outsmart them or how to win the interaction, but curious about what in us is being stirred by their presence. That's the beginning of wisdom. That's the beginning of self-mastery. Emotionally intelligent people understand that the world isn't filled with villains and victims. It's filled with people, all of them carrying invisible burdens. All of them trying, failing, learning, protecting, posturing. And when someone's toxicity bumps up against their peace, they don't match the energy. They transform it, not out of superiority, but out of understanding. They realize that if we respond to dysfunction, we're simply reinforcing the cycle. They don't take things so personally. Not because they don't care, but because they do, just not in the way we often think. They care enough to not let someone else's inner chaos become their outer identity. They care enough to stand rooted in their own emotional center, instead of being yanked around by someone else's imbalance. It's not detachment, it's discernment. Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse. This doesn't mean allowing yourself to be disrespected. But it does mean learning the difference between protecting your peace and fighting every battle, because not every battle is yours. Not every comment deserves a comeback. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is see someone clearly and still choose not to engage on their level. It's hard. Of course it's hard. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes silence. It takes self-awareness. But the people who have walked through fire and learned not to burn others with it, they show us what's possible. They show us that our emotional responses don't have to be dictated by other people's emotional immaturity. They've discovered something sacred. When you stop seeing enemies and start seeing echoes, you unlock a level of emotional freedom that few ever reach. Because you realize it was never about them. It was always about you. and what you're willing to carry. Sometimes the real power isn't in silencing the noise around you, it's in becoming so grounded that no noise can shake what's true within you. Most of us were taught that strength looks like speaking up, standing our ground, and confronting the problem head on. And yes, sometimes it does. But emotional intelligence reveals something more nuanced, something quieter, more intentional. It shows us that strength isn't always loud. In fact, sometimes the most powerful move we can make is stillness. When emotionally intelligent people encounter toxicity, their first response isn't to fight back or prove a point. It's to pause. They create space between the offense and the reaction. And in that space, they reclaim their power. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the kind of wisdom that doesn't rush to defend, doesn't scramble to be right, and doesn't absorb the chaos around them. They respond, they don't react. Because reacting is easy. Reacting is reflex. It's wired into us by years of survival. But response is intentional. It requires clarity. It requires perspective. It requires us to slow down just enough to remember who we are, even when someone else forgets who they are. You've felt it before, haven't you? That moment where someone says something sharp, maybe in a meeting, maybe in your own home, and everything in you tightens. You feel your jaw clench, your shoulders rise, your pulse pick up speed. That's your body preparing for war. And yet, emotional intelligence invites us into a different battlefield, not with others, but with ourselves. It's in that split-second space where you get to choose, will I let their energy dictate my response? Or will I create a pocket of peace in the middle of this chaos? See, toxic people thrive on reaction. They feed off urgency, off emotional volatility. They cast lines baited with sarcasm, guilt, or manipulation, not because they're evil, but because they've learned that chaos keeps them in control. When you don't bite, when you don't bite, when you don't flinch, when you let silence speak for you, that's when the whole pattern begins to break. Stillness is not the absence of response. It is the refinement of response. And I know, in a world that rewards speed and sound, choosing silence can feel almost unnatural. We think, if I don't say something now, they'll win. If I don't react, I'll look weak. But here's what emotionally intelligent people understand. You don't lose your power by choosing peace. You reinforce it. That stillness, that pause, is not surrender. It's strategy. It's strategy. Because in the pause, we step back far enough to see the full picture. We begin to understand that what's being said isn't always what's really going on. The raised voice might be masking insecurity. The control might be hiding fear. The attack might be deflecting shame. And when we rush to react, we miss the opportunity to see the truth behind the moment. Response, not reaction, is what turns conflict into clarity. Emotionally intelligent people understand that being right isn't the goal. Being true is. And being true sometimes means choosing a response that serves peace more than pride. It means holding your ground without raising your voice. It means choosing not to match dysfunction with dysfunction. It's dysfunction. It means walking away when engagement costs your soul more than it's worth. They know that maturity isn't measured by how loud you argue, but by how quietly you protect your peace. We don't always get it right. We slip. We say the thing we didn't mean. We carry the argument home in our chest. That's okay. This isn't about being perfect. It's about becoming more conscious. It's about becoming more conscious. About recognizing when we're about to give away our calm for the sake of winning a moment that won't matter tomorrow. Stillness is not passive. It is presence. It's presence. It's the deliberate decision to choose long-term peace over short-term victory. And when you live from that space, when you begin to practice that pause, everything shifts. Conversations soften, relationships reveal their truth, and your own sense of self becomes less fragile, more grounded. You stop being pulled into other people's storms and start becoming a calm that reminds them of the shore. Because ultimately, emotional intelligence is not about managing other people. It's about mastering the space between stimulus and response, the sacred pause where your power lives. When you stop reacting to the noise, you become the one who sets the rhythm. You ever notice how some people walk into a room and immediately pull others into their storm? It's like they carry chaos with them. One moment everything's calm and the next, It's all tension, drama, and confusion. And if you're not careful, they'll sweep you right into it. That's the thing about toxic people. They feed off your reaction. They thrive on getting a rise out of you, on manipulating your emotions, on making you feel like you're the unstable one. But emotionally intelligent people, they've mastered something powerful. They've learned the art of detachment. Say, now, detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent. What it really means is that you care deeply, but not at the cost of your peace. You understand that other people's behavior is a reflection of them, not you. And when you live from that place, you stop getting pulled into their drama. You stop dancing to their tune. See, toxic people want control. They want to control the narrative. They want to control how you feel about yourself. They want to keep you guessing, doubting, apologizing, over explaining. But emotionally intelligent people, they don't hand over that power. They've learned how to observe without absorbing. They've built a kind of internal anchor, something that keeps them grounded no matter how hard the emotional wind blows around them. They don't respond to every slight or snide comment. They don't try to prove their worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. They don't play tug of war with someone who isn't interested in resolution. Just reaction. Instead, they lean back. They create space. Foo. They say to themselves, this doesn't belong to me. And that tiny shift, that's where everything changes. It's not always easy, especially when the toxic person is someone close to you. A coworker you can't avoid. A family member you can't exactly ghost. Ghost. But even in those situations, emotionally intelligent people still find a way to detach. Not from the person necessarily, but from the chaos that person brings. They learn how to engage from a distance, how to care without becoming consumed, how to stay in the room without losing themselves. Detachment is emotional discipline. It's the conscious decision to stay rooted in your values, even when someone else is losing their grip on theirs. It's refusing to take things personally when someone lashes out because you understand that hurt people, and while that might explain their behavior, it never justifies it. And here's the truth. Not everything deserves your energy. Not every comment needs a reply. Curb people. Not every battle is worth fighting. Sometimes the most powerful response you can give is no response at all. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's strength. Emotionally intelligent people aren't trying to win arguments. They're trying to win back their peace. And so they walk away from petty conversations. They disengage from gossip and passive aggression. They stop needing to have the last word. Why? Because their sense of self doesn't come from being right. It comes from being aligned, aligned with their integrity, aligned with their purpose, aligned with something bigger than momentary validation. And when you start living like that, when you choose presence over provocation, when you choose stillness over struggle, you begin to rise above the noise. You start noticing how much lighter your days feel. You don't carry other people's issues like they're your own. You don't internalize every rude tone or rolling eye. You simply let it pass through. Like wind, like weather, like weather. That's the superpower. And what's beautiful about this is that anyone can learn it. You don't need a degree in psychology to start detaching. You just need a moment of clarity, a pause, a decision to stop making someone else's dysfunction your responsibility. A willingness to say, I see what's happening here, but I'm not going to be a part of it. And when you can do that, consistently, quietly, confidently, you stop reacting and start leading. You lead with grace, with calm, with intention. You set the emotional tone instead of inheriting it. Babe it. And maybe most importantly, you preserve your power. Because in a world that's constantly trying to shake you, distract you, trigger you, staying grounded is a revolutionary act. And sometimes the strongest move you can make is not moving at all. Toxic people have a way of making you question yourself. That's part of their playbook. It's subtle at first, a sarcastic remark, a backhanded compliment, a little jab disguised as a just kidding. But over time, those moments chip away at your sense of self. And if you're not careful, you start wondering, am I the problem? That's what they want. They want you uncertain. They want you small. Because people who doubt their worth are easier to control. But emotionally intelligent people, they don't fall for that. They stay anchored to their self-worth. They've made a decision deep down that their value isn't up for negotiation, not based on how someone treats them, not based on what someone says in a heated moment, not even based on whether someone likes them. Their self-worth comes from something stronger, more rooted, less reactive. They don't let external noise determine their internal truth. That's the key. Because if your confidence rises and falls with how other people treat you, then you're handing them the remote control to your life. And when toxic people realize they can push a button and get a reaction, they'll keep pushing, again and again. But when you're anchored, they can press all the buttons they want, and nothing happens. No reaction, no flinch, no emotional spiral. Just silence, stillness, strength. Now, anchoring your self-worth doesn't mean you never feel hurt or frustrated or insecure. It means you don't live there. You acknowledge the feeling without becoming the feeling. You know the difference between what someone says about you and what you know about yourself. And that gap, that inner clarity, is what allows emotionally intelligent people to stay upright in the storm. Because let's face it, life is full of people who will try to shrink you. Some will do it to feel taller. Some won't even realize they're doing it. And some will do it just to see if they can. But when you're anchored, you stop playing small to keep others comfortable. You stop watering yourself down for the sake of keeping the peace. You stop apologizing for existing fully, confidently, authentically. One of the most powerful things emotionally intelligent people understand is that validation is nice, but it's not necessary. They don't need constant applause to know they're doing the right thing. They don't need everyone's approval to sleep at night. They've built something stronger, self-respect. And self-respect is what allows them to walk into a room full of judgment and still stand tall. Not arrogant, not defensive, just steady. And when someone tries to cut them down, they don't respond with revenge or resentment. They respond with clarity. They see through the manipulation. They recognize when criticism isn't about growth. It's about control. And instead of shrinking, they stay the same size. They stay whole. This doesn't mean they're immune to feedback. Quite the opposite. Emotionally intelligent people welcome feedback when it's honest, constructive, and grounded in respect. But they don't internalize the kind of feedback that comes wrapped in venom. Venom. They don't let destructive voices become defining ones. They know the difference between someone trying to help them grow and someone trying to make them doubt. So when someone crosses the line, when they gaslight, belittle, or demean, emotionally intelligent people don't engage in the back and forth. They don't defend their worth like it's something that can be taken away. They don't get pulled into the performance, they simply hold their ground. They might say, "That's not true." Or they might say nothing at all, because sometimes silence is the loudest truth. And what happens when you live this way, when your self-worth becomes unshakable, is that toxic people lose their power. They lose the ability to derail you. They lose access to the parts of you that used to feel fragile, and slowly they either back off or fall away. Not because you push them, but because you stop participating in the game. And here's the real magic. When you live anchored in your worth, you stop chasing people who don't see it. You stop begging for the bare minimum. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Ooh. Instead, you move through the world with a quiet certainty. And that quiet certainty, that's what draws the right people in. People who don't just tolerate your worth, but celebrate it. Because once you realize that your value isn't something someone else gets to decide, you stop giving them the power to define your experience. You stop letting their brokenness determine your wholeness, and you start living, leading, and loving from a place that can't be shaken. At the end of the day, your worth isn't found in someone else's opinion. It's found in your ability to stand in your truth, even when the room tries to silence it. It's easy to meet toxicity with toxicity. When someone disrespects you, when they lie, when they gossip, when they throw you under the bus, it's tempting to return the favor, to show them how it feels, to give them a taste of their own medicine. That instinct is human. But emotionally intelligent people make a different choice, not because they're weak and not because they're naive, but because they understand that meeting fire with fire doesn't burn the problem down. It just spreads the flames. So instead of choosing contempt, choose compassion. And I don't mean compassion in some soft, passive way. I mean a kind of deep, mature awareness that says, I see you. I see what's behind this behavior, and I'm not going to let it poison me. Toxic people act out of pain. Excuse it, but it often explains it. Hurt people hurt people. Insecure people control. Angry people lash out. People who don't know how to process their emotions often dump them on others. And if you're the nearest target, you'll get hit, unless you know how to step aside. Oh. Emotionally intelligent people recognize that most toxic behavior is rooted in fear, shame, or trauma. They see the insecurity behind the arrogance. They hear the desperation in the manipulation. They notice the wounds behind the walls. And instead of reacting with equal force, they respond with something unexpected: understanding. Now, let's be clear. Choosing compassion doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior. It doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. Emotionally intelligent people still hold boundaries. They still walk away when they need to, but they do it without carrying the bitterness. They do it without letting someone else's darkness dim their own light. Because when you choose compassion over contempt, you stay in control. Tato. Contempt feels good in the short term. It gives you the illusion of power. But in the end, it costs you your peace. It keeps you tied to the very thing you're trying to get free from. Compassion, on the other hand, creates distance. Not just physical, but emotional distance. It allows you to let go, to move on, to stop fighting battles that aren't yours to win. I once heard someone say, you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. And that's exactly it. Emotionally intelligent people don't show up for every fight. They don't waste their energy trying to fix or punish someone who's not ready to take responsibility for themselves. Instead, they stay focused on what they can control: their response, their mindset, their values, and you know what's powerful. When someone expects a fight, and you give them grace instead. When they expect to trigger you, and you stay calm. When they expect retaliation, and you walk away without a word. That kind of response doesn't just protect your energy, it reveals your growth. It says, I'm not here to play your game. I'm not here to prove anything. I know who I am. It also breaks the cycle. Because when you mirror someone's toxicity, you keep the dysfunction alive. But when you meet it with compassion and boundaries, you interrupt the pattern. You create space for something different. And maybe, just maybe, you plant a seed. You give that person a glimpse of what maturity looks like, of what accountability looks like, of what self-respect looks like. Now, they might not change. They might double down. They might get even more defensive. That's okay. Because compassion isn't about changing them. It's about protecting you. It's about refusing to let someone else's dysfunction contaminate your character. Some of the strongest people I've ever met are the ones who've been deeply hurt and still choose not to hurt others. The ones who've been disrespected and still speak with dignity. The ones who've been ignored, overlooked, betrayed, and still choose to lead with integrity. That's not weakness. That's real emotional strength. That's character. Because in a world where people are constantly reacting, constantly clapping back, constantly trying to one-up each other, choosing compassion is radical. It's courageous. It says, I'm not lowering myself just to make a point. I'm rising above because that's who I am. And that's the thread that runs through every emotionally intelligent person. They don't let pain turn them into someone they're not. They don't let anger write their story. They know that at the end of the day, how you treat others, especially when they don't deserve it, says more about you than it ever will about them. So they lead with compassion, with strength, with clarity. Not to be the bigger person in some self-righteous way, but because they refuse to be pulled into the emotional chaos that defines toxic relationships. They've learned that you don't rise by tearing others down. You rise by staying grounded in who you are, especially when it's hardest to do so. And sometimes the boldest move you can make is to be kind when no one expects it. One of the hardest things emotionally intelligent people ever learn to do is walk away. Not storm out, not slam the door, not leave in a burst of anger, but walk away quietly, clearly, and completely because staying would cost them too much. And that moment, that decision, it's often the most powerful turning point in their lives. There's this myth that strong people always push through, that they always stay, that they fight, no matter what. But sometimes, strength looks like letting go. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is stop trying to fix what's not yours to fix. Stop hoping someone will change and start choosing yourself instead. Toxic people are experts at making you believe you owe them something. That it's your job to keep the peace, to explain, to justify, to keep showing up no matter how many times they cross the line. They wrap guilt in their words. They twist your kindness against you. And suddenly, you find yourself in a loop, trying harder, bending more, tolerating things that chip away at who you are. But emotionally intelligent people eventually come to a moment of clarity. Staying in a toxic situation isn't loyalty, it's self-abandonment. And that's where the shift happens. Let's go. That's when they stop asking, what will they think if I leave? And start asking, what will happen to me if I stay? It's not an easy realization, especially when it involves people you care about. A friend, a partner, a parent, a boss. We don't just walk away from a person, we walk away from a story we hoped would be different. From the version of them we believed in. From the future we kept fighting for. That kind of grief is real. But emotionally intelligent people understand that choosing their peace doesn't mean the relationship didn't matter. It means they matter too. They don't leave with bitterness. They don't burn bridges just to watch them fall. They leave with boundaries, with dignity, with a quiet understanding that staying would require them to shrink, to compromise, to ignore their own truth. And that's a price they're no longer willing to pay. Now, walking away doesn't always mean cutting someone off completely. Sometimes it means redefining the relationship. Loving someone from a distance, choosing to engage differently. Sometimes it means leaving a job, a group, a circle where your values no longer fit. Whatever form it takes, the decision is the same, to no longer participate in what keeps you stuck. And the beauty of it is once you walk away, you make space. Space for clarity, space for healing, space for relationships where you don't have to earn your worth or beg to be understood. Space to breathe again. And when you give yourself that space, something amazing happens. Coward. You remember who you are. You remember what it feels like to live without walking on eggshells, without second-guessing every word, without constantly managing someone else's emotions. That's what emotionally intelligent people protect. Not just their time or energy, but their wholeness. They understand that peace is not the absence of noise, but the absence of constant emotional negotiation. When you're in the presence of someone toxic, it can feel like 100 tiny compromises every day. But once you step away, you realize just how loud the silence of peace really is. It takes time to get there. The pull to go back can be strong. You'll remember the good moments. You'll question your decision. That's normal. But emotionally intelligent people stay the course. They remind themselves of the cost, of how it felt to carry someone else's dysfunction on their back. And they move forward, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. And here's the thing, when you walk away from what no longer serves you, you model something powerful. You show others that it's okay to choose themselves, that boundaries aren't betrayals, that letting go isn't failure, it's freedom. You shift the narrative. You give people permission to do the same. Because at some point we all have to ask ourselves, is this growing me or is this draining me? And if the answer is draining, day after day, month after month, then the most honest, most loving, most powerful thing you can do is take a step back, not out of anger, but out of respect for yourself, for your values, for the life you actually want to live. You don't have to explain it to everyone. You don't need a round of applause. You just need one moment of truth, one clear step, one quiet decision that says, I will no longer negotiate my peace. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is finally let go.